have it at the house, for those who want to read it.
Wow.
Good.
That became a defining moment in their relationship and led them to marry in the following year. Ivor always said that he was a man of his word, and throughout their lives together, he kept every promise that he made to Sylvia in that letter. Life was very busy for them. Their journey together was fun and exciting, unconventional at times, inspirational, adventurous, cozy, and contented. They were inseparable. In 1975, they bought their first home together. Something here about the barn, and that was their first home. Being unusual, not the average California ranch-styled architecture, and keeping with their unconventional taste, they found this, moved in, and for those who were there, it was a wonderful experience. It literally was a barn that was converted into a home. They made another purchase that was a part of a lifelong dream of Ivor's that Sylvia fully embraced, and I think was even attracted to him when they first met and talked about it. Was they bought a sailboat. They called it the Caramia. After a few years in the Bay Area, Ivor and Sylvia moved, along with the boat and their dog Tonka, down to Newport Beach. Ivor took a job with JPL, and Sylvia landed at Ford Aerospace. While at Ford, Sylvia met two very special women. One is Jean Pleasant, who she became fast friends with and developed a fun and loving relationship which extended to Ivor. The other was Kathy Dannemiller, who became Sylvia's mentor. While in Southern California, Ivor and Sylvia dove headfirst into the world of sailing. They took classes in navigation. They researched a ton. I was going to say a boatload.
That would be appropriate.
I think so. Yeah. They bought tons of new equipment. They refurbished and re-rigged the Caramia, and they did short sails whenever they could on the weekends. And then, after 13 years of preparation, they realized their dream and sailed to Cabo San Lucas. Ivor was 65 at the time. Sylvia was 45 when they departed San Diego Harbor from Cabo San Lucas in 1988. After 18 months or more in Cabo, I'm a bit fuzzy in terms of how long they were down there. They were down to like their last couple $100 in their bank account when Sylvia received a surprise call from a former colleague at Lockheed Martin, who asked if she would be interested in coming to work for him. So they packed up their belongings. They arranged to have the Caramia brought back to Dana Point Harbor and moved to Houston, Texas. They bought a lovely house with a pool. They bought a truck. They bought a Taurus car as well. Ivor bought cowboy boots and learned all about cooking Texas beef. A few years later, Sylvia joined DTA, Dannemiller, Tyson and Associates, as a full-time consultant, and her career skyrocketed. In addition to having hundreds of clients in the profit, nonprofit, education, healthcare, and government sectors around the world, Sylvia would co-author and publish 2 books achieving her lifelong dream to have a listing in the Library of Congress. Sylvia included Ivor in the DTA world, which was a mind-blowing experience for him in many ways, most importantly, quenching his thirst for learning. He participated in strategy offsites, planning sessions, and meetings. He was leaning in whenever they allowed, and it was quite a bit, of sharing his experiences around systems management best practices and pitfalls. The icing on the cake was that Kathy, Roland, and Paul embraced Ivor's input because, as Sylvia would say, they loved Ivor's brain. In 2003, Ivor and Sylvia moved to Goodyear. Ivor was 80 and Sylvia was 60. This became their most enjoyed place to live. It was close to Sylvia's cousins, Judy and Bob, and an easy jumping off point to visit family and friends. Throughout their lives, Ivor and Sylvia were very involved with family and friends. They took annual vacation trips with Sylvia's cousins. Many of their friends and family sailed or sat and visited them on Caramia, whether it was in Alameda, where they started with Caramia, Dana Point, or Cabo San Lucas. They attended the weddings of Ivor's children and their granddaughter Ashley. They came to meet their grandchildren very soon after birth and multiple times during those first few years of their lives. They were always there for milestone celebrations like first communions, high school graduations, college graduations, and more. Many visits to Gary and Olga and Ashley on the way up to spend Christmas at our home. Continued Christmas visits from 1995 to 2016 at our home. Sylvia would wear her Christmas sweater almost every year, and then began to wear her USC wear from me that she got, because we would wager on the big game right before Christmas when USC would play UCLA. And she said no more, because USC beat UCLA all the time. In fact, I think I only got one year where she gave me some UCLA slippers, because we won, barely. So, anyway, it was a fun little thing between Sylvia and I. They were generous with their home, their time, helping out by leaning in on whatever their family and friends needed, and they were generous with their money. They contributed to charitable organizations, especially ones that focused on women's health, education, and equal rights. They were thoughtful, loving, and trusting of people, yet they were not easily conned, and they had a mutual disdain towards dishonesty. They loved living life and tackled challenges as a team. Ivor loved storytelling and enjoyed telling a joke or two. He would always laugh when he delivered the punchline. I'm certain that everyone here, and others who are not here, heard all the same stories, or possibly even different embellishments or versions of the same one. I can still see Sylvia sitting next to Ivor, engaged in listening to those stories like it was the very first time she was hearing them.
Yep.
Though there were times when our eyes, Sylvia and mine, would meet, and she would roll her eyes, or she would have that look of, oh my God, here we go again. And then we would look at each other and we would smile, or we would just begin laughing, and meanwhile, Ivor was just going on. So, anyway. They were so active in everyone's lives in the 49 years that they had together. They were involved with and loved the relations with Jean and her family. They enjoyed and socialized with most everyone at DTA. Tim, Sylvia's brother, was always referred to as the brother I never had by Ivor, a relationship that was very near and dear to his heart. Sylvia kept in touch and attended events with her best friends from second grade, and kept in touch with her high school friends and her USC sorority sisters. Individually and as a couple, they impacted all of us and left a positive impression with everyone they met. During their time on this planet, Ivor and Sylvia had a very special love and respect for each other. They were inseparable, and almost done. And a few times when they weren't together, while Sylvia traveled for work in the later years, they spoke over the phone every day. This is who they were. I'm now going to read a tribute to Ivor and Sylvia from Roland Loop, one of the partners at DTA, who unfortunately couldn't make the trip. Every now and then, someone comes into your life who is unusually talented, nicer than H, considerate, forgiving, unpretentious, and who just overwhelms you with who they are. Ivor and Sylvia were two of those people for me. Sylvia and I worked together for over 20 years. She was always even-headed, steady, helpful, engaged, and generous with our participants and with me. She always made me look more competent than I was. Her kindness and generosity looked effortless. Ivor was a master storyteller. His stories covered decades about his childhood, his family, his varied and fascinating career, and his service in World War II. He amazed me by remembering the names of guys in his unit in North Africa for almost 60 years. For years, he and I would have a wee dram of scotch every evening that we were together. What a treat. When I was with Sylvia and Ivor, I could be me with no pretense. They endured my biases, my boastings, my idiosyncrasies, my humor, even laughed at some of my jokes, my anxieties, my ramblings, and my faults. Each and both are a gift that I will always cherish. All right. It's now time for anyone else, if you would like to say a few words about Ivor and Sylvia, you may.